With a mere 2 weeks until America's election day, many mainstream media news outlets and even some YouTubers have moved into full-on prediction mode. Who's gonna win? Hillary has got it in the bag. The polls are showing Hillary wins in a landslide. Did you see the polls? The polls. How many polls? Did you have any polls? Have you have a fishing pole? That's all anyone talks about these days. I haven't seen this many polls since my trip to Warsaw. Lovely city. Fascinating architecture. Anyways, back to USA. It seems like a lot of people are predicting that Hillary already won this thing. And while I do see the Donald as an underdog candidate, saying he has no chance of winning at all is a little naive. I think it's been a close enough race so far that it's still anyone's ballgame. Even CNN, the Clinton news network, says Clinton's only leading by 5 percentage points. And even if you do trust CNN, which you gotta be crazy to think they're not backing and skewing towards Hillary at this point, 5 points isn't that much. That's well within the margin of error if you ask me. But let's take a minute to look at the media's current claims and possibly confirm or refute them in a little ditty I'm gonna call Why Donald Trump Could Still Win the Presidency. Let's begin with the most overtrusted and overused weapon the media has: the polls. I think knowing a little bit more about these polls everyone is trusting so much will help us see things a little clearer. Once you see how polls work, it will be easy to see why we need to be a little more skeptical about this. Voting polls come in two kinds: opinion polls, where they ask people who they intend to vote for, and exit polls, where they ask people who they just voted for. So we're mostly dealing with opinion polls at this point, since most people haven't voted yet. Well, right from the get-go, we know these people they're polling haven't voted yet. Plenty of time for them to change their minds or maybe just get sick on election day and not make it. Our next level of instability is how the polls are done. These opinion polls are conducted by various private polling companies who have agendas and flaws themselves, I'm sure. For example, these polls are conducted mostly through phone calls and emails to prospective voters. And I don't know about you, but when I get calls about surveys or polls, I usually just hang up right away. You really gotta think about the kinds of people who would participate in these things. I really don't think most voters would be sitting on the phone for 30 minutes answering a polling questionnaire. And then think about who the pollsters are actually calling in the first place. Some reports have suggested they may be calling more Democrats, which is why Hillary is staying in the lead so much. It's called oversampling. It's basically a shady practice where pollsters look for and call certain demographics in order to skew their poll to their desired outcome. And oversampling in these polls isn't that hard. For example, if we were a pollster who wanted to make it look like Hillary was winning, all we would have to do is call a few more black voters. Clinton has a 79-point advantage over Trump with blacks. So even a small oversample of black voters of 5% could swing the overall poll by 3 full points. And that's huge. Hillary is winning only by 5 points in CNN's poll. So now that we see all the variables in election polling, I think it's clear that it's not clear who's going to win. Also, we have already seen how ruthless Hillary has been in her campaign, already resorting to cheating in order to defeat Bernie in the primaries. Do you think she would cheat again? You bet your ass she would. Hillary would do anything to win, so I wouldn't put it past her to rig some phony polls in order to make it look like she's winning and has a big lead. She's trying to convince people that it's all over. That way less Trump supporters show up and vote. But I think a lot of people, me included, we're onto her. We're onto her and the mainstream media's bullshit. Now that we've deconstructed the polls, which predict Hillary will win, let's take a look at a couple of other prediction methods. Two specifically I found in a video from Fox News called Professor Stands by Prediction That Trump Will Win. Now I know it's Fox News and they're pro-Trump, but that doesn't matter much in this segment. The professor's predictions still stand true regardless of network bias. Let's take a look.
So you are almost alone.
Yes.
Among academics predicting a Trump win, not because you're coming out for Trump, but because you have a model that you believe leads to the conclusion he's going to win. Tell us about this model. How have you arrived at this conclusion?
Well, there are two things. Okay, the model is called the primary model, so I take into account primary elections, real elections, how the candidates are performing.
He brushes over the elections part, but what he's saying here is that the primary model uses real election results from real voters at the real primaries. Much more reliable than polls done over the phone by people you don't even know you could trust. Election numbers are stone cold facts. Those people didn't say they were gonna vote. They actually voted. Needless to say, I like the sound of this already. Even though I hesitated trusting a man named Helmut Norpoth, I think this professor may be legit.
And I can track primaries for about 100 years, since 1912, so it's quite a set of elections.
Yes.
And it usually turns out that the candidate who does better in his party's primaries or her party primaries beats the other guy who does less well. And so in this election, the primaries that I'm relying on, it's only New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Yes.
Donald Trump came out on top. better than Hillary Clinton in the Democratic race.
That makes sense. Almost seems like people forgot or want to forget that Hillary barely beat a 75-year-old socialist Jew in the primaries, while at the same time Trump won the Republican nomination in a landslide. I think that's very telling as to who actually has more supporters in this country. That and the attendance at the campaign rallies. Trump supporters fill entire stadiums, while Hillary supporters can barely fill up a Toyota Prius.
That seems like a fair measure. And what's the other one? What's the other
one is what I call the swing of the pendulum, the tendency after, let's say, 2 terms of the White House party being in office,
yes,
that there's a change. And I can track that actually for a longer period of time, for almost 200 years. And that also gives a prediction that Republicans are favored this year.
The pendulum effect sounds like it fits this year's election pretty well. After 8 years of Obama, a mediocre placeholder president, the majority of the country seems to be ready to change it up. And electing Hillary is basically saying you want 4 more years of Obama. I don't think the voters want that. There was nothing that good or great about his presidency to make the country want 4 more years of Democrats. That's it. The polls say Hillary will win. The primary model and the pendulum effect say Trump. This makes me lean more towards Trump. I don't really trust the polls, but of course I could be wrong too, or the polls could be wrong. Either way, I think the biggest point I want to make is that we just don't know yet, and it's close enough of a race that it could go either way. So trust no one fully. Go with your gut, and if someone says they know for sure who's gonna win, you know for sure they're a liar. Who do you guys think's gonna win the election? Comment your answers below. I've also inserted some good links about some of the stuff I talked about in the description. Thanks for watching, good night, and good luck.
Hey guys, my name is Juliana, and today we're going to be doing the ab challenge. We're going to do leg raises, see how many you can do as many as you can, and let's get started. Alright, so you're going to start off laying down, raise your legs and your bum at the end, and do as many as you can.